looking up information, and they're like, don't ever, like, I'm like, what about these houses? They're like, don't ever do it. Don't ever go there. These tenants, these people, da 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 da. And I was just like, every time they said that, there was something inside me that just said, that's not everyone. You have to see each house and neighborhood individually. You can't tell me they're all terrible, because not anybody is all terrible. That's not reality. You know what I mean? Like in anything, not all companies are terrible. Not all people are terrible. Not all, you know what I mean? So I just knew that there was like a blankness there. They didn't know what they were talking about, and I would have to seek out the knowledge myself.
Maybe you could unpack a little bit more, because I think this is something you share with people and teach people, is that when you turn your residence into a property, not just thinking about it as a place that's going to be the best place to live, but thinking about the payment. You talked about that a little bit. Can you talk more about this, the forward thinking of taking your house and saying, this is eventually going to become a rental property, and what kind of criteria people should think about when they do that?
Yes. And I do it for a couple reasons. I do it so one of the learning lessons I learned was to make sure whatever the rents are in that neighborhood, your mortgage isn't more. That's the telltale sign that it's overvalued. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if your mortgage payment is $2,000, but it's running for $1,000, it's overpriced. It just is what it is. This has withstood the chance of time wherever I've seen it. Trust me on this. And if you're mindful of that and you get it for less than that, you can always, if you have to move, which a lot of us do, you can be cash flow positive and have your equity. So one of the big things I say now is treat your primary like it's an investment, because, and the other half of that is like, I've seen the results of that. So I just purchased another house. And again, this was after all these mistakes, so I knew better. So I purchased a house. It was like $25,000 undervalued as a foreclosure, right? It was in a mixed lower income neighborhood. So, and mind you, I'm not like my lifestyle is not lower income, but when it comes to housing, I can go maybe a step or two down than what I can afford, right? So I can afford this neighborhood at this stage, and what I know, I buy this. It just is what it is, because this is what happened. You know, so when I took that mindset, I just took that house and I sold it after 4 years. We bought it for $175 and it sold for $300. So now we're starting, me and my ex, we split the money and proceeds, and I used it for, you know, I currently have it plus what I used it for. But I want to tell you, I'm an example of when you think strategically like that, you're the house on the bottom that goes up. The houses on the top just stay on the market. So we have $400,000 houses all day. Those don't move. My $300K house that I bought for $170 was like, I constantly had people looking. So it's the bottom of the market that'll get the most attention, because in today's society, wages aren't necessarily keeping pace, right? Yep. With inflation. So this makes sense on a fundamental level of this country, of what's going on. So even right now during this downturn in COVID, guess what? Most of our properties have people who are essential workers. Remember, working class, lower income. They still have Section 8 coming, right? I know I haven't missed a payment. But when you start to get to the high end, you get that. But like when you focus on that lower tier or the working class neighborhoods, you get people who are going to be working even during a pandemic. So it's very interesting how when you focus on those who have the least and equitably build them up, they pay me, I pay them, but it also fulfills you all the way through a lot of ups and downs. So that was one of the big things. Like, so making sure it's undervalued, but also just understanding that if you ever do move, your ability to get appreciation is so much higher than a house that's already expensive, because those just sit on the market. Right? And I know, and for the people in my community, I help everyone, but I focus on the Black professionals, because when I started doing this, the people who resonated with lower income and working class without the stereotypes, right, were other Black professionals, because all of us are like, look, I'm a doctor now, but I grew up like that. So all of them had my story. Like, they just understood that, yeah, a lot of people are dissing on that, but I grew up in these neighborhoods, so I can recognize just intuitively, because I lived it, like, okay, maybe not that neighborhood right now, but this one's fine, right? And it's very, you know, very much I grew up and this is my experience in it. And so for us, like, being able to buy a house or a primary like an investment means that we might actually have $50,000 or $100,000 to invest with. But right now, we're all first generation. We don't have that generational wealth. So we cannot do the same things other people are doing and advocating. I love Bigger Pockets, but a lot of people there do have generational wealth. Like, their advice to ask a friend for money, their advice to ask your parents for money, the idea that you can get a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 loan for them is a possibility. It is not in my community. So we have to really talk about that and do things differently. And so for us, I said, unless you're born rich, I want you to buy your investment property. And all of that came from my experience. But ever since, but it's proven the test of time. Like, it's working for everybody. It sort of resonates and makes sense, but trust and believe. It's the houses that were overlooked that are the first places people look, because they can't afford $400,000 houses, but 300, 250, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's all on your ability. Do you have to keep up with the Joneses, or do you want to keep up with the Phyllises, which is like, you don't know how much money's in my bank account, and let's keep it that way.
Yeah. I love it.
And it's good, guys. It's good. But the thing is, like, I don't have to pretend or floss or do all that other stuff. That'll come in time. When I have like the 7, 8, 9, 10, or the multifamilies, that's when I will floss. But like for me, my own metric is like, until all of those rental properties pay for the floss and the BMW, I'm just not going to put myself out there. Even though right now I can make the note. It's just a matter of allocating your money. It's only so much at one time.
Yeah, and I like how and your story was I'm not going to say by accident, but you bought this condo and you're like, wow, this the difference between my Vegas condo or my Vegas house and this condo is low price. It's affordable for me. But then you also started noticing that the areas you're investing in are also, they're good. They're good places to live. They're good places. There's good people who need my service. Like there's people who need my rental. And so you built your kind of base of financial independence by having a small number of properties that you can pay off pretty quickly and that now produce income.
3 to 7 years. 3 to 7 years, you can pay it off. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So you get to that point, you have some stage of financial independence. And the other thing I want to talk about is you mentioned the neighborhoods themselves. And so this is one of those topics that I know you know a lot about because you've invested there and you've also grown up there. I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and I know I've had some as well on lower price neighborhoods. And so I want to dig into this a little bit. And one of the things I've heard you use this before too, and I know I've used it, is that a lot of investors qualify neighborhoods. They say, all right, this neighborhood's like an A neighborhood, this neighborhood's a B neighborhood, this neighborhood's a C, kind of like a grading in school or something. This neighborhood's D. And you also often hear terms like, this is a war zone. This is a place where there's lots of crime, or this is crime. And the problem, and this is where we get to call it like it is. A lot of the times these are, they're not reality. They're prejudice. There's race involved. There's
stereotypes.
Stereotypes. And so I'd love for you, and I want to go ask some other questions about that, but just talk a little bit more about the reality of lower income neighborhoods, what that people don't really realize is going on in some of these places.
Right. Yeah. And I didn't realize how pervasive it was. Like that rigid, it has to be a war zone. Like there's no other possibility. So I want to start off by saying, poverty does not necessarily mean crime. It doesn't necessarily mean you're unhappy. It doesn't necessarily mean you don't have friends, family, or communities. It's actually the exact opposite. So, so sometimes this is a conversation on poverty and people thinking like, I was poor and happy. Everyone I know was poor and happy. You can not have all the extra money in the world, but still have your birthday parties and your cousins and friends, and you still go out to different things. You just do it at a different pace, right? So we're not going to Disneyland, but your parents do save up to take you to Knott's Berry Farm, right? That's where we went. Do you know what I mean? Like people think and to be quite honest, like just to be very fair, sometimes Black people and white people, like it's across the board. Sometimes they think, poverty, it has to be crime and drugs and, gangbangers asking you to do drugs, like right outside your door. And it's like, listen, poverty, you can still have an all right life with poverty. Me and the people I know, we're just walking proof of it. You just do things differently. We shopped at the thrift store. My mom had 7 kids, right? It worked in the cafeteria. So like, it's not like we had a ton of money, right? You go to the thrift store, right? You go to McDonald's and play in the playhouse, right? There's just different things you do that are free or low cost. You take picnics at the local park. So like, it doesn't have to equate with anything horrible. And that's across the board sometimes. But I just want to say that like overall, we really need to check ourselves by thinking just because you don't have a lot of money that their life is less than yours. Because I will put my childhood up against anyone with money and tell you, you can't out-fund me or out-happy me or out-community me and how I grew up. You just can't. Do you know what I mean? I had friends in community, like just neighbors for days, anything we needed, they were there because we had more community in the lower income neighborhoods. That's just how you grow up. the culture. So, but when I started doing this, I sort of knew when I went online, I'm looking up information and they're like, don't ever, like, I'm like, what about these houses? They're like, don't ever do it. Don't ever go there. These tenants, these people, da 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 da. And I was just like, every time they said that, there was something inside me that just said, that's not everyone. You know what I mean? It basically goes down to that, Chad. Like, that's not everyone. You have to see each house and neighborhood individually. You can't tell me they're all terrible, because not anybody is all terrible. That's not reality. Do you know what I mean? Like in anything, not all companies are terrible. Not all people are terrible. Not all, you know what I mean? So I just knew that there was like a blankness there. They didn't know what they were talking about, and I would have to seek out the knowledge myself. Just start with that.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of places to start. And I think that's part of what I wanted to get out there, is that that even people who think they're not having that bias, it's happening. And so just being careful of that, being aware that you can't paint and you might just think you're evaluating a real estate investment and saying, well, that's just where I want to invest my money. But these are real people. And, and what you found, what I love that you've demonstrated to your community and other people that you're helping teach, is that this can be a win-win relationship. And in fact, that's the best way to do it, is that you can make money, you can have financial independence, and you can focus on the people who are your customers. And this is going to make my community better. I hope you enjoyed this clip from my interview with Lisa Phillips. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below if you have any follow-up questions or comments. And if you want to hear the full interview that I had with Lisa, I have a link below to the podcast, which will give you the full 55-minute interview. If you're new here to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell so you don't miss any of the videos I have coming in the future. And if you like these kind of topics about practical real estate investing or getting started with your real estate investing journey, be sure to see the playlist that I have linked below about how to get started. It's all sorts of different topics about what those first steps are, also interviews with other people who talk about their experience buying their first property, the first few properties. So if you're new to investing, be sure to check that out. I think you'll enjoy that playlist. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Chad Carson. You've been watching Coach Carson TV, which is all about investing in real estate, achieving financial independence, and doing more of what matters. See you next time.